It's impossible to control everything, and sadly, that's just a part of life. Sometimes you can be doing everything right and things just happen out of nowhere. Things that are completely unpredictable and happen whether you want them to or not. And there's nothing you can really do about it. After all, no matter how much planning you do, those events are out of your control. And believe it or not, a little while back I happened to find myself in one of those exact type of situations, working under the watchful eye of a schedule, a timeline that I created, my design, each and every moment preordained. I knew how the next few weeks should go. No. I knew how they were going to go. I'd written everything down after all, and because of that, I had no reason to worry. But that brings me to the other thing. Life happens to love irony, and because of that, at all costs, you should never tell it your plans. Now, right about this time, there was a number of things I actually needed from this car. Trust, reliability, the ability to drive it during the big projects I had planned for the other cars this upcoming week. And now, I didn't really feel like I was asking for a lot, but I guess I should have figured things were going a bit too smoothly. What I didn't need was for the car to be stuck in limp mode, hardly running, and miles away from anywhere I could actually fix it. Either way though, the car does have to make it home, whether it likes it or not. So the best thing I can do right now is to stop the existing log and fire up a second one. That way at least I've got some additional data to send to the tuner, and maybe that data will actually help us fix the issue. After all, I guess technically we are testing these injectors to prevent this very thing from happening in the future. And it's pretty hard to fix an issue without knowing what exactly causes it. Can't make an omelet without cracking a few eggs, in other words. But I guess there is just one bright side to all of this. Even though things seem dark and temperatures are about to absolutely plummet, the sun's coming out, and that's one thing. Now, this car running perfectly with these massive injectors was definitely wishful thinking at best. Big injectors are notably difficult to tune. The car's just got way more fuel than it has any idea what to do with. So especially at the two max situations, wide open throttle and idle, the car really is just confused. And on the way home, I could pretty much confirm this. The car was struggling at idle, and it was clearly struggling at full throttle. But what I think is making this car run worse than ever right now is the fact that we triggered limp mode. And limp mode on these injectors is dumping an obscene amount of fuel. So no wonder we have a check engine light. But I won't really know what that's for until I scan the car. And before I do that, I should probably send these logs over to the tuner. After all, that's probably going to be what actually fixes this issue. And who knows how long it'll take before we hear back. Wait a minute. No, it can't be. I mean, what are the odds? I've been waiting months for some of these packages. Huge projects for the other cars that I didn't think I'd even get to start for another couple weeks. And everything's here today? Really? I mean, you're clearly joking, right? Of all the days that these packages could have showed up, this is quite possibly the worst. And don't get me wrong, it's not that I'm not grateful they're here. I'm just dealing with a completely unrelated issue, and I should finish it, right? But to deny how long I've been waiting for these boxes, planning out what's inside each and every one, months for some of these, that would be foolish too, right? I feel torn in the middle, like I could go either way. Should I keep doing what I was doing and fix an issue with no end in sight, or start something that I know would be a lot more fun? This can't be happening. Ignoring packages I ordered months ago, and intentionally at that, I must be some sort of crazy. But I guess at this point, what's another week? And what do they say after all? Finish strong? Delayed gratification? I don't know about any of that, but I guess there probably are merits to seeing projects through. After all, we do need this car available before we start anything else too crazy. So I guess the first step is going to be to figure out why we're in limp mode to begin with. I mean, what's even causing this check engine light? And with the slight sense of regret, that's exactly where I decided to start today. Simply plugging the car in and scanning the ECU. Looks like we do have a couple codes. The typical voltage code I get every time I upload a new tune, and this P1127 code, which I have a hunch might be our culprit. Looks like it really is just as simple as the car running way too rich. And that code triggered a limp mode, which caused it to run even worse because it has such big injectors. And it looks like my diagnosis is supported by the findings from our tuner. Right on time, he got back to us having looked at our logs. It looks like the car was in limp mode a lot longer than I had realized. Pretty much the entire power pole, we were stuck at wastegate boost, so that's good. And along with that confirmation, he actually sent me another revision already. So I'm thinking the next step to getting this car reliable again is going to be to upload that new revision, which hopefully will prevent this car from jumping straight into limp mode again. Won't know for sure until we try it out though. The deeper I get into fixing this car's issues, the more and more I'm starting to realize that this was probably the better decision. After all, it's about -10 right now. So even if I wanted to tear open those boxes and rip apart a car for another project, that would probably be more of a pain than it's actually worth. And at least working to fix this issue, I know my time is going somewhere valuable, versus starting a project we might not even be able to finish with the weather. Just thinking out loud. Either way, the tune is uploaded now, and this time the next step isn't actually a third gear power pull. Doing those in limp mode is definitely useless. I need to know for certain if it's going to jump into limp mode to begin with, so the next log I need to get is just general driving around town. And this time, to my observation, the car seemed to be behaving just like normal. From what little I pushed it, the car felt absolutely great. Honestly, not a lot different than when it was dialed in on the old injectors, which is a really good step. I wouldn't know for certain though until I sent this log off to be reviewed though. While the tuning is for the most part out of my control, I can't help but feeling like I should be helping in some way, supporting all the work that's being done on the software side with, I don't know, something that would help the car itself. This is a fuel filter, and since the car has a new fuel pump and injectors, this is absolutely something we should be doing as well. This, like the name suggests, filters out all of the junk that's in your fuel tank before it gets sent directly into the engine. And to my knowledge, the one that the car is currently running is extremely old, so we have no reason to not replace this. Plus, it's something I'm willing to do even though it's -11 outside. We'll see if I regret that though. Being productive in any capacity definitely helps keep the feelings of complacence away. At this point, I was in my head again. I was really starting to wonder if this big turbo project was worth it from the start. Hopefully I didn't just sign myself up for a life of reliability issues. Creeping under my passenger side of the car, I can start to see what I need to actually swap. But like a lot of things on this car, it's hidden behind a plastic shield. And 2 bolts later, I was able to get a much better look. This filter is extremely simple. It's got 1 line in, 1 line out, and a strap holding it in place. And since it's part of the fuel system, it's definitely pressurized. But we can help this to some degree by removing the fuel cap. The old filter is still going to be full of it, but at least it's not pressurized anymore. And plan A was to be so fast swapping the cover from the new filter onto the old one that hardly any fuel spilt out. But that plan failed almost immediately. It's a lot easier to be fast when you can feel your fingers. Thankfully, the backup plan was to just have a bucket under this entire system before I removed anything, and that worked flawlessly. These lines really do just snap into place, and the only thing you need to worry about when attaching them to the new filter is that the filter has the arrows pointing towards the front of the car. It is a one-way filter, so putting it in backwards really isn't an option. With both the input and the output snapped back into place, I was able to reattach the strap and start to get everything back into its original place. Apparently, the daily driving log we did was good. If the car was going to go into limp mode, it would have already done so by now. And since the car is looking healthy in the log, we have the okay to do another power pull. Isn't that just nice? And I was pretty nervous here. I was worried we had actually damaged the car last week, so the last thing I wanted to do was do it again. At least on our side this time is a brand new fuel filter. I'm not sure how old the one that was on the car is, but it's definitely older than my ownership. And everything nasty inside of here is going directly into the engine, so at least that's fixed. I let the car idle for a bit to make sure nothing was wrong with our filter, and since everything checked out, I started to make my way out to the middle of nowhere once again to do yet another power pull. And if the car behaves well, there's a pretty high chance that this is going to be the last time we'll get to turn up boost on the stock block. Once we have forged internals, that's a completely different story. But for stock block, as the car currently sits, this is likely the most boost we'll be able to make and keep the engine safe. Unlike last time though, something was different. Even though realistically I was in the same situation as I was last week, it felt completely different. And it's not just that the weather or the car changed. I think it's a bit more than that. I'm starting to understand that things are out of my control. And past a point, certain things in life are just bound to happen. What you should do is all that you can do to help the situation. And since in this case, we have, what happens next happens. No sense in putting it off. I started the log with some mundane driving to warm the car up, and then I prepped for the third gear pull. And believe it or not, the car survived. In fact, it survived both a number of other pulls and 2 more tune revisions to really dial in fueling. The car is absolutely fantastic. And at the end of the most recent log, I was given the green light from our tuner that my car is as far as we can realistically push it stock block. Any more boost or changes in timing and we risk hurting the engine. So barring some potential revisions to further clean up fueling, this car is pretty set on power. And believe me, it is way faster than it was with the KO4. Once this turbo spools, we're holding a flat 20 psi all the way to redline, in every single gear and without it tapering off in the high RPMs like a smaller turbo. In other words, it's an absolute blast to drive. And it's extremely nice to know that the tune that the car has is perfectly safe. The tune is adjusted so that it minimizes that initial torque spike of the turbo building boost. And don't get me wrong, the car still definitely makes more torque than it did before, but the way it comes in is a lot more gradual, and that's really just to protect the stock engine. Plus, the only light on the dash is high flow cat related, so no worries there. The only question left to answer is, was going big turbo worth it? It's not cheap and it's a lot of work, but looking back on it, I learned so much from it that it really isn't even a question to me. Learning is always worth it. Worth is a matter of perspective, and perspective changes based on what's going on around you. Sometimes life can get pretty dark, can make you question what you were doing and why you were doing it. But that doesn't mean that your original reasons for doing something were wrong to begin with. Second guessing yourself is normal, especially when life is at your odds. Like I've said this whole time, things happen that are out of your control. And as someone who likes to make plans for everything, that's tough to accept sometimes. But it's something I'm working towards. A plan is only good if everything in it is under your control. Is it even a plan anymore if most of it hinges on stuff that you can't even impact? At that point, isn't it just a hope left completely up to chance? It's impossible to control everything, but one thing that you can always control is how you react to what happens around you. After all, if life throws a wrench in your plans, it's really just the perfect chance to pick up the pieces and rearrange them. And that way you can make something you do like. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like and subscribing for more. That's the best way you can help support me and my channel right now. Either way, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day.